servants have got around pay freezes using a legal loophole that has seen the number of those earning over £100,000 a year nearly doubled. Now, this is from research that has been carried out by the Taxpayers Alliance. They say official figures show there are now 2,050 mandarins, great word, not the little kind of orange that you get at Christmas, who take home six figures. That's an increase of 88% in 2016, where you had just over 1,000. 195 are now on an annual salary above £150,000. Now, interesting that around 50% of them still work from home. Can you remember when Jacob Rees-Mogg, like the demon headmaster, was stalking, as Brexit Opportunities Minister and Efficiency geezer, whatever he was stalking around the empty offices of Whitehall and putting sort of demonic post-it notes on people's laptops and getting everyone really upset, saying, get back to your desk. At the same time, of course, it seems to me that a lot of people in Whitehall now have the whip hand over the government. If they don't like their minister, well, they're accused of bullying, and then when the government tries to get through a policy like the Rwanda plan, guess what? The civil servants go on strike. So is this really a good return on our investment as a taxpayer? Who better to talk about it than the Chief Executive of Taxpayers Alliance, who made this report, John O'Connell. John joins us now. John, I mean, it doesn't make for good reading for a lot of people out there, especially in the private sector, who might not have any recourse to going on strike or any independent pay bodies or legal loopholes they can use to get through the cost of living crisis.
Thanks for having me on, Alex. Yeah, I think it's an interesting point you make in the comparison with the private sector. Of course, when sharp things happen externally, such as the COVID pandemic or any other external shocks, private sector businesses are expected to cut their cloth according to their means. But that doesn't always happen in the public sector, of course. Now, since 2016, we've seen Brexit and the COVID pandemic. So you might expect there to be some uptick in the number of civil servants there to deliver certain measures, but certainly for the pandemic, there's no more emergency measures in place. There's no more furlough support being given or support being given to businesses. So you'd expect to see the number of civil servants to come down over time, but it actually hasn't. They've continued to increase. So what we've seen is a continued growth in the size of the state, even after these big external shocks. And of course, when a big external shocks happen to a private sector business, they're expected to ride it out. The same doesn't happen in the public sector. And of course, with all of these new entrants into the public sector, you see big pay increases. You also see huge pensions being given out that people in the private sector would never get in their own walk of life. So it's not just the bill for today, it's the bill for tomorrow's taxpayers with a huge pension liability. I mean, in terms of what it's costing us, the average Brit who pays our taxes on top of our salaries, other than that, what about the distortion this is having upon democracy? Because one thing I found really fascinating in your report is the fact that basically that you say that civil services become top heavy, with staff in the highest three pay grades accounting for 87% of the overall increase, with a 50% rise in those who directly advise ministers. Do we not have a problem that the civil service, rather than being essentially minions of the government who give a manifesto to the public to vote on and then want to see the policies they think they always enforce, the civil service is now essentially doing a over the government, so when they don't like the policy that the government wants to put through, whichever it may be, it's big large, they find ways of restoring it and preventing it from being able to exercise. So this isn't about, getting more people on board to deliver the services that taxpayers would expect for an increase in the bill. This is, lots of people coming in at higher levels. And some might say that, policy advice to ministers is crucial, particularly in a more complex world. And that may be the case, but at the end of the day, public services are getting worse. People can see that with their own eyes out on, in their everyday interactions with the public sector, be that through the DVLA or, the Passport Office up until recently, which wasn't performing very well, has got slightly better, but wasn't performing very well. People feel that public services are not doing that, not doing that well. And for a huge increase in public servants, you would imagine that most of them would be focused on frontline delivery, and unfortunately that's not the case. And it means bigger bills for taxpayers with worse services. So there's a real sort of need to refocus on what it is that taxpayers expect for their hard-earned money. And as you say, I would imagine that were the government to change tomorrow and there was a different party in office, they might find the same problems. They might find an obstructive civil service that were not delivering what the government of the day wanted. So it's really all about taxpayers' priority and making sure that those essential services are being delivered as efficiently as possible.
So this isn't sort of rhetoric then that often gets rolled out on the right wing of politics, but such as Donald Trump when he said drain the swamp, and the government very often sort of pointing the finger at everyone but them, blaming the blob, if you will, for failing to deliver on things. I mean, could it also be a fact that naturally after Brexit, because we've repatriated a lot of powers, or in theory we should have repatriated a lot of powers and started making decisions for ourselves by ourselves, that's naturally going to incur an expansion of people in Whitehall?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, our report looked at Brexit and the pandemic as two external shocks that have happened. And so you might expect an uptick in civil servants to help deal with that. But they haven't dropped off since both of those external shocks have become more normalised into our politics, not least the pandemic. That drove a large increase in the civil service headcount, but it hasn't come down since that great day in July when we were all out, in July 2021, we were allowed to go about our business again. That hasn't come off again. So, in fact, the headcount has continued to increase. So this isn't just about those external shocks. This is about a slow growth of the state. And what we actually want to see in the longer term is a government of any stripe really have a look at what it is that the state does. Why are we talking about every single problem in the context of the government will solve that for you? All it needs is more taxpayers' money. What we really wanted to do is step back and say, does the government need to do that? Does it need more taxpayers' money? And if it doesn't, start to wind down functions of government so that we can really start to trim back down the headcount in the civil service.
I mean, we've heard this time and time again, haven't we? That we'd have a bonfire of the quangos, that we would cut down on the amount of people turning up to work. And then we're now faced with a situation that half of them are not turning out to work. And when the 17th century bean counter Jacob Rees-Mogg went around to see whose bums were on seats and took the official attendance register, many departments were found wanting. Is this potentially an efficiency saving with having fewer people in offices, maybe the heating bills lower, electricity bills lower, maybe they can get rid of some of the office space, sell it to the Qataris, why not? Or does this represent a work-shy attitude among those who should be toiling for the country?
If they're at home doing exactly the same job as they were before, presumably we can sell some of the prime real estate that they're sat in for more functional use. I don't really see the need for keeping these offices open with barely any people in them. It doesn't help the businesses of Westminster. It doesn't help the restaurants, the bars where civil servants might have gathered for a post-work drink. It certainly doesn't help them. So, if these people are serious in their in their sort of desire that they're doing exactly the same job at home to exactly the same spec with exactly the same productivity as before, surely we can sell some of this prime real estate. It doesn't necessarily need to be to the Qataris, by the way, but we can put it to much better use than sitting idle while civil servants are at home apparently doing the same job as well as they did before.
Yeah, well, how do you make sure they're doing the job as well as they did before when they're at home? How do you monitor them?